Coming up on this week's Ask GCN Anything, how to descend in high winds, what is the best bike for indoor training, does a lower tyre pressure mean more punctures, and what are those small springy things in quick releases, plus a lot more too.
That's a really good question, looking forward to the answer on that one. But first up is this from Hornet Luca, who asks, how much does heat affect performance during cycling?
Well, that's an interesting one and very difficult to quantify, isn't it? Because different riders will respond to extreme heat in a different way. The likelihood is that if you've grown up in a very hot country, you are better able to deal with high heat than if you've grown up in a cold country. But everybody will be affected to some degree. And that is due to the body's own mechanisms to cope with the heat, almost like a defense mechanism, really. So once your core body temperature rises to a particular point, your body will prevent you from working too hard so that you don't do yourself any serious damage.
Yeah, but there are a few things you can actually do to help your body when exercising in the heat. The first one, the obvious one of course, is make sure that you're properly hydrated. And the second one is acclimatizing to the heat itself. Now this is something I've actually done in the past, way back in the late 90s. I trained for a particularly hot and humid Commonwealth Games road race over in Malaysia. And what I actually did was train in my garage on my home trainer with a tumble dryer full of wet towels. And it actually worked for me. And you see pros doing similar things now as well, especially when you look at the kind of climates they have to perform in. Let's take the Qatar World Championships last year, for example.
Yeah, or even the Rio de Janeiro Olympics in 2016 too. There's a lot more things that you can do though to help yourself if you are riding in extreme heat, and we went through a few of those tips in this video.
It was warm there, wasn't it?
It was hot, yeah.
The first rule is to make sure that you drink plenty. Sweating is your body's very effective way of cooling yourself, but what it does mean is that you need to stay on top of your hydration status so that you're replacing the water that you're losing through sweating.
Yeah, remember that more than 50% of your body is made up of water, so it's really important that you keep that level maintained. Make sure you're hydrated before you even head out, and then take plenty of fluids out with you. You really want 2 big bottles, 750 mils, and ideally you want to favour electrolyte drinks over water, as they'll do a much better job of keeping you hydrated.
Our next question came in on Twitter using the important hashtag TalkBack from Dave Lambert. Any tips on descending in heavy wind over 60 kilometres per hour? I'm riding in Tenerife, which has beautiful descents, but the heavy wind is very scary.
You're right, riding in heavy winds like that is pretty scary. I mean, it's not too bad when you've got a tailwind directly behind you. A headwind is pretty safe as well, although that can be pretty annoying. But once the wind comes from the side, especially when you're traveling at high speed, it can make things pretty choppy on the bike, as the wind can really affect the steering of your bike.
Yeah, our first piece of advice for this situation would be just to be cautious. There's no prizes really for going faster on descents when you're not competing. So don't be afraid of just putting your brakes on and going slower. The next one though is equipment, in particular your wheels and especially your front wheel. So a traditional shallow section, box section rim is going to catch the wind far less when it's coming from the side than a deep dish wheel. And once again, the fact that the shallower rims are less aero is not really going to be of any importance when you're not competing.
In fact, we've got a few tips on riding in crosswinds in this next video.
The most efficient place to ride is right in the gutter, staying out of the pace line, but still being sheltered from it. It's a difficult place to stay, but it's a skill well worth mastering.
And with this in mind, and if you want to make somebody really suffer, you don't want to offer them any protection at all. And by putting Simon right in the gutter, he's getting hardly any benefit from my slipstream. And if, and it's a very big if, I'm stronger than him, I should actually drop him. Something I couldn't do without the help of a crosswind.
It's time for the rapid fire round now, and should we try and be quick this week?
Super quick, let's do this.
Okay, first up from Tracy on Twitter. What are the pros and cons of getting a spin bike versus a regular bike trainer for home use? Well, if you're talking about specific spin bikes, they've got quite a different feel in terms of the way that you pedal and the type of resistance they use. You can get other static bikes, such as a watt bike, which give a very road-like feeling. And the advantage of having something like that in your house is that it's always there, set up for you to use as and when you want to do some indoor training. The cons to that might be that it takes up a little bit more room in your house, and also it can be quite difficult to get in exactly the same position as the bike that you're using out on the road.
Good answer there, but not exactly rapid is my view on that one. Next up we have this from Ed Newell. Hashtag talkback. Years ago I was told to keep tyre pressure high to prevent punctures from sharp objects. Softer tyres puncture easily? True or false? Or torf, have you written down? That took me a while to work out what that was. But basically, the risk of getting pinch punctures, are actually higher if you have a lower tyre pressure. But nowadays, because tyres are getting increasingly wider and frames being built to accommodate them, yeah, the actual risk is decreased because it's just slightly
greater air volume within the tyre, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. So, and as in relation to getting flints and bits of glass in your tyre, that can be something to do with the casing, and it's just about luck as well, I think.
Yeah, penetration of a sharp object, I don't think it has anything to do with tyre pressure whatsoever. That is the casing itself. Next up, Renee Starling on Twitter. I have a cross bike for commutes and trails, but would a separate endurance bike be better for riding in a sportive? Well, not necessarily, Renee. If you're very comfortable with the position of your cross bike and you want to go and do a sportive, we recommend just purchasing some slick tyres so that you've got slightly less rolling resistance on the road, and you're probably then going to be fine. You might at a point find that the gear ratios aren't quite what you need on the road versus off the road, but again, that can be changed with a different cassette on a different set of wheels, which you can use on your cyclocross bike. So if you're comfortable, it's fine.
8 out of 10 for speed there, Dan, but very succinct. Next up, and finally in the rapid fire round,
not quite,
is Peter Sagan. No, it's the penultimate question. Thank you very much. It's from Peter Sagan. Thanks very much
I don't
for getting
think
in
it's
touch,
the real
Peter.
one, but it might be.
But yeah, I haven't just written down. Anyway, here we go. Can Froome be just as fast on an entry-level bike compared to a fit average climber on a high-end bike? No, he wouldn't be as fast, he'd be faster. Now that's a rapid answer.
It is, yeah. It's about the rider as much as the bike, or way more than
Definitely.
the bike. The bikes will make a bit of a difference, but you put Froome on a £1,000 bike, or even less, and he's going to be super
that
fast
would be
up
rapid
the climb
fire.
still. Anders Skansen has written in underneath one of our last Ask GCN things. I've been wondering lately, what exactly do those little springs on the skewers do, and why are they cone-shaped?
It's a cracking little question, that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's basically to keep either side of the quick release equidistant from the axle on the hub, which makes getting your wheel in and out, both at the front and back, far easier. The reason that they are cone-shaped is so that they don't go over the axle part, which goes into your fork legs or into the rear dropouts.
Basically balancing the width of your skewer.
Our next question is effectively about recovery, and it came in from Andy. I missed my morning ride. Can I take a 7 p.m. ride at night and still be rested enough for my 5:30 a.m. ride the following morning? Well, once again, this is going to be determined by a number of different factors. Firstly, what you've been doing on the lead up to these two rides in terms of your training. Secondly, what you are planning on doing on the actual rides themselves. And even the type of job you've got can affect this type of thing. So if you are working in an office and you're just sat down and at least physically relaxed, if not mentally, your recovery powers might be greater than if you are a manual labourer.
Yeah, I think what you need to ensure is that if you choose to do the ride in the evening, after the ride, you make sure you eat properly and then get some rest. Well, that's very, very important indeed. And also, you really do need to factor in your level of fitness. So say, for example, you do 4 or 5 rides a week, you may find that you can cope perfectly adequately with those back-to-back sessions. But if you train just a couple of times a week at low intensity, you might actually find that doing those sessions within such close proximity may give you pretty sore legs. But I think overall what you need to ensure and what you need to integrate into your training is a degree of flexibility, especially if you're working around a full-time job. And there's no harm from time to time doing a bit of extra rest or having close together sessions, basically.
And if you want to improve your recovery time, we've got a few tips for that in this next video. Oh, look at that smoothie.
Look at that t-shirt, more like.
Look at that face. Young.
First and foremost, recovery happens when we're resting. So we should aim to do just that. However, most of us lead hectic lives, and so we probably don't have the luxury of being able to collapse on the sofa after a hard ride. Although that is probably something we should all aim for at least.
Yeah, I definitely aim for that most days. And you should particularly think about the timing of your training sessions as well. So if you're someone with a very busy and hectic job, it's probably best not to do your training sessions before work. Instead, do them after work. That way when you get home, you can relax before going to bed.
Yeah, because bed, or more accurately sleep, is even more important to your recovery than you might think. Even power naps have an incredibly beneficial effect on your recovery.
I'm not sure that now's the best time for a power nap, Si. Maybe wait till you get home.
And finally, on this week's Ask a GCN Anything, we have this question from Bike and Dog Trips over on Twitter, who asked, why is it deemed so important to improve your FTP, your functional threshold power? I would have thought it more useful to improve your VO2 max threshold.
Well, to a degree, the two are linked, aren't they? I mean, your VO2 max is important, but you're not going to have a power at VO2 max of 500 watts if your FTP is only 150 watts, for example. So FTP is kind of the basis for fitness, really, in terms of endurance road rides, on top of which you can put the icing on the cake with your shorter, sharper efforts. At the other end of the scale, though, you've got track sprinters and BMXers for whom FTP is not really important at all, because often their events are less than a minute long.
Yeah, it is a really interesting subject, though, because let's take Mark Cavendish, for example. Now, his FTP, compared to a lot of his contemporaries in the pro peloton, isn't particularly high, yet he is one of the most successful riders of all time.
Yeah.
And if you compared his FTP to a member of the public, obviously it'd be way higher. So
yeah, it's all relative, isn't it?
It is all relative. And in fact, we discussed this very topic, didn't we, in a video that we filmed over in Mallorca about how important is FTP to pro cyclists.
And finally, we have the Punctures, the likes of Philippe Gilbert and Greg Van Avermaet. Now, those guys might not necessarily be able to sprint with the best sprinters, time trial with the best time trialists, or climb with the purest of climbers, but what they do have is a superhuman ability to deliver power on short climbs.
Yeah, these beasts have the biggest disconnect between their functional threshold powers and the power that they're able to produce over short climbs of maybe 1 to 5 minutes in duration. They are anaerobic monsters. Not only have they got an amazing ability to go into the red, they can do it on a multitude of occasions over the course of a single race. And this, in fact, is kind of what made the Olympic road race in 2016 so fascinating, because really, Greg Van Avermaet, on paper, should not have been able to win that race with the climbs involved. However, on the form of his life, he was able to dig deep, go into the red, stay with some of the best climbers in the world, and then easily outsprint them at the end.
Well, that's it for this week's Ask GCN Anything. Don't forget you can leave your questions for future shows in the comment section down below, or if you happen to think of something whilst you're out and about and you want to use social media, you can use the hashtag talkback and we will find it there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There'll be a globe somewhere on the screen right now. You just have to click on that to subscribe to GCN. And we've got a couple more relevant videos for you now. Just down here is Si's first look at Mavic's fairly revolutionary new tubeless tyre setup.
And to keep it rubber related, how about clicking just down here for the truth about wider tyres?
Down where?
Just down there. Cheers, mate. You're on it today, aren't you?